Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Carolee Makes Cards. If you watched my last video, you'll know that I fell short of the number of Christmas cards that I needed to pop in the mail. Well, I've taken care of that problem, but now I want to have a few cards on hand for the just in case. I have another set of quick and easy cards featuring Simon Says Stamps embossing folders. The backgrounds for all of these cards are going to be created with distress spray stains. I want lots of shine, so I'm creating a mixture in my spray bottle of perfect pearls and water. Tonic Studios Craft Spoon comes in handy for adding the powder to the bottle. I give it a good shake and it's ready to go. I'm creating 7 backgrounds and I will choose 3 colors from the selection shown. Spray stains can be a little messy, so I'm working inside my spatter box. I'm working on Bristol Smooth cardstock. This cardstock can withstand a certain amount of water without pilling. The panels are oversized, just a little bit wider than I need them and quite a bit longer. I will be using the bottom part of the panel for the die cut sentiment. The effect will be a sentiment that is white with a little bit of gradient of inking. Okay, so the first thing that I do is spray on some color. For this panel, I'm using a combination of Tattered Rose, Speckled Egg, and Abandoned Coral. The panel is sprayed with the Perfect Pearls mixture. Right away you can see the beautiful sheen that is added. I start to dry it a bit just to get an idea of what it's going to look like. I decided that I wanted a lot more shine, so I hit it with the Perfect Pearls again and then with my heat tool. Creating backgrounds with distress stains is very flexible and organic. Colors and spritzes of water can be layered on until you like what you see. To control the amount of color that you're spraying onto the panel, it's simply a matter of adjusting how far you are from the panel. If you want it fairly tight, then you spray closer. Moving and tipping the panel helps to blend the colors together. I dried the panels partially to help them along, but I'm setting them aside to dry naturally, and so it's a good time to work on my secondary sentiments. I've selected 4 sentiments from Simon Says Stamps Tiny Words Christmas. This is a wonderful sentiment set. They work great on their own or accompanied with a larger main sentiment. This is an older set, but it is still available. Each sentiment will be used twice. I flip the black cardstock around and then stamp on the other end with Versamark ink. These cards are done in assembly line fashion. That is the most time-efficient way when you're working with multiples. And then on goes the white embossing powder. It's heated up and I'm ready to cut them. For straight sentiment strips, I like to use Simon's Sentiment Labels die set. The same die is used to cut black foam so that the sentiments can be stacked. All of the panels are trimmed down to A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. After they're embossed, they'll be trimmed down just a little bit more. The cutoffs from the panel are retained so that I can use those for the sentiment die cut. My embossing is going to be done on a Sizzix Big Shot. Simon's folders are 3D and they're very thick, so I remove my cutting plates. My sandwich consists of a thin shim, the packaging cardstock from the embossing folder, topped off with another piece of cardstock. For this first panel, I'm going to be using a gorgeous embossing folder called Scandinavian Christmas. When the panel is placed in the folder, I make sure that the flat panel is going to close on top of it. Run your hand over both sides of the embossing folder. The one that does not have the raised areas of the image is the side that you want to fold on top of your inked panel. Depending on the amount of detail, this can sometimes be a little bit tricky. When I can't figure it out, I'll run it through with just a scrap piece of paper first. The embossing folder that I'm using now is one called Kaleidoscope. I notice a couple of wet spots on my panel, so I'm just going to make sure that those are dry. Don't want to get ink on my embossing folders. Lumen was one of those embossing folders that it was a little bit tricky to find the smooth side. A strip of washi tape will mark the top of the folder for future use. This is a pretty embossing folder called Pinpoint Starlets. The design has a grid, so it's important that it's placed squarely in the folder, which I did not do, but I was off just a little bit and I knew I'd have to trim it down so I could fix it. This is my favorite all-time embossing folder called Triangle Burst. Absolutely gorgeous. So I had to use it on 2 panels. I also did a second panel of another favorite of mine, Scandinavian Christmas. Before I started to assemble the cards, all of the panels were trimmed down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. The inked panels are mounted on black cardstock measuring 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. The A2 size card bases are made from Neenah Classic Crest 110-pound cardstock. All of the die cut sentiments for these cards have shadow dies that were cut from black cardstock and black foam so that they could be stacked. The script dies were used to cut the cut-off pieces from the inked panels. Simon's Fa La La is used for the main sentiment for this card. I put some weight on it to make sure that there's good contact between the foam and the uneven surface of the embossed background. For the 2 cards that feature the embossing folder Triangle Burst, I'm using a gorgeous die-cut sentiment by Simon called Peace. I love the bold, simple lines of the letters. Simon's Chunky Joy is used on the cards that feature Scandinavian Christmas. The background that was embossed with Lumen was the only card that I did not use the cutoff end to die cut the scripty sentiment. I wanted to enhance the masculine vibe of this card, and so I die cut the sentiment from copper metallic cardstock. Of course, that meant that I had to redo the secondary sentiment, which was embossed in copper embossing powder. This card was embellished with some fun sequins by Brutus Monroe called Natural Birch Wood Grain. It's not always easy for me to come up with a masculine card, and this was not on purpose, it just happened. The remainder of the cards were embellished with confetti from Studio Cassia called Pastel Rainbow. I picked through the mix and chose colors that were suitable for each of the cards. To help make the sequins and confetti stand out, they were finished off with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. When Morning Dew dries, it is clear, leaving a jewel-like effect. And that wraps up these quick and easy cards featuring Simon Says Stamps embossing folders. Simon's 3D embossing folders have beautiful deep impressions. Create beautiful Christmas cards in just about a snap of the finger with embossed backgrounds and a large die-cut sentiment. If you are interested in any of the products used in these cards, links have been provided in the description of this YouTube video and over on my blog at bonniecarolee.com. As always, I appreciate your visit.